Hi and welcome to this week's headlines. I'm Sharaad Kuttan and here are the highlights. Just when you thought Malaysian football could not sink any lower with a 10-0 loss to the United Arab Emirates in the World Cup qualifiers, this happened. Malaysia faces a possible ban and a hefty fine. Police are on the lookout for those involved. The Himpunan Maruah Melayu gathers pace as UMNO and government leaders send mixed messages about whether they support the rally, which was initially called in the wake of Bersih 4. On the one hand, MCMC says it will deal with websites promoting the rally, but the Prime Minister himself says he will not prevent UMNO members from attending it. There is significant opposition from Malay Muslim voices. And to add to the country's woes, the foreign media continues to batter the reputation of the Najib administration. The Wall Street Journal had a story from a Abu Dhabi investment firm alleging that a payment of 1.4 billion USD from 1MDB is missing. And Al Jazeera's 101 East program raises uncomfortable questions around what it calls the sensational murder of Mongolian woman Altantuya Sharibu. The Prime Minister's office has issued a response to Al Jazeera. But the story of the week is the Singapore general elections. Today is polling day for the 17th general elections in Singapore, following the dissolution of Parliament on August the 23rd. You might be wondering why Singapore has had more general elections than us. Well, they count elections conducted in the city-state in 1948, 51, 59 and 63. Singapore also conducts presidential elections, which started after constitutional amendments gave the once purely ceremonial seat limited executive powers. The stringent eligibility criteria imposed by the People's Action Party, or PAP, which drafted the amendments, has meant that several elections have passed without contest. Now, the eligibility criteria include having held a cabinet ministerial post for at least 3 years, having headed a statutory board, or having been a CEO of a company incorporated in Singapore worth over 100 million Sing dollars in paid-up capital. One thing to note is the constitutional re-engineering that has gone on since independence from Malaysia in 1965. Critics have noted that all these changes have entrenched PAP controls over the government. This includes the multi-candidate super constituencies called Group Representation Constituencies. With its minority race obligations, the GRC is seen as yet another bureaucratic hurdle for the already hard-pressed opposition parties. Until, of course, the last general election, when the Aljunied GRC was won by the Workers' Party. The GRC had been helmed by a senior PAP cabinet minister. The loss broke a psychological barrier, as did the win by the late JB Jeyaretnam in the 1981 Anson by-election, ending complete dominance of Parliament by the PAP. The polls were called following the death of Lee Kuan Yew, founder of the PAP and Prime Minister for 31 years. The public mourning for Lee, in addition to the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of Singapore's independence from Malaysia, seemed to favour the PAP. But for the first time in recent memory, all 87 constituencies in the country are being contested. But along with the elected seats, Singapore's Parliament consists of non-constituency members of Parliament, an innovation that allows the highest vote-getting losers to secure position in the Assembly. But NCMPs, as they're called, have limited powers, much like nominated MPs. Yet another innovation introduced supposedly to give Singaporeans a chance to have diversity in the Assembly without actually eroding the PAP's hold on power. Yet the opposition party's share of the popular vote has grown over the years, in part because more and more constituencies are actually being contested. The PAP's vote share stands at about 60% now. The big question that needs to be asked: are elections in Singapore free and fair? Critics concede that while elections might be free, they're hardly fair. While the system does not suffer from the appalling malapportionment of our system, analysts point to gerrymandering as a practice that has tended to favour the ruling party. But despite all kinds of barriers, more and more Singaporeans are coming forward to assert their rights. For many of us who only see the virtues of Singapore's high-performing authoritarian state, the question is, what can Singaporeans possibly be complaining about? Well, there are many bread and butter issues that have driven voter sentiment, especially for the older generation, that's had to bear the burden of greater healthcare costs and a very limited social safety net. Population pressures have also mounted, with some 1/3 of the people in Singapore actually being non-citizens. This has put a strain on social amenities like transport. But Singaporeans continue to be persuaded that only the highly educated can lead them. And opposition parties are now fielding candidates with degrees from Oxford and such elite institutions. So, do Singaporeans want more freedom? Perhaps. But what's clear is that whatever the results are, the PAP will have to respond to popular pressure and discard the father-knows-best approach to politics. Thank you again for joining me on this week's headlines. Remember, if you have any comments, you can leave it in the box below or tweet me at Sharaad Kuttan. This has been BFM 89.9.